When Hollywood rolled out its crimson carpet, the brightest stars dazzled millions, but behind the camera, some of the biggest names in cinema unleashed volcanic fury. For every glamorous close-up, there were shattered props, trembling crew members, and studio executives praying for the next cut. From crystal vases hurled at makeup artists to bar fights that cost thousands, the golden age of Hollywood was as much about epic tempers as timeless performances. Today, we peel back the velvet curtain on 10 legendary legends whose off-screen tantrums loom as large as their on-screen triumphs. Bette Davis glided into any scene with a steely gaze and a reputation that preceded her sharper than any director's clapboard. Known for withering quips, "Fasten your seatbelts, it's going to be a bumpy night," was kinder than most. She turned perfectionism into an art form of terror. On Beyond the Forest, she once lobbed a telephone at a director who dared suggest a different angle, then stomped across his polished desk just to leave scuff marks in her wake. During All About Eve rehearsals, she drove co-star Marilyn Monroe to tears, dismissing her blonde nothing in front of the crew. Even Jack Warner, Hollywood's iron-fisted studio boss, admitted that for all the heartbreak Davis caused, her films made millions, proof that fear and brilliance were sometimes inseparable companions. Do you think Bette Davis's relentless pursuit of perfection justified the fear she inspired on set? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. Swashbuckling Errol Flynn brought Robin Hood to life with athletic grace and a grin that could disarm any audience. Camera, however, Flynn's legendary drinking fueled a rage no stunt choreographer could tame. On one drunken morning, after a mild critique, he grabbed a prop sword and sliced through an expensive camera, sneering, "That's how Robin Hood would have handled it." Women on set learned to fear his advances. Extras who rebuffed him found their scenes mysteriously sabotaged or worse. When local police were called after he trashed a hotel bar in a brawl, Warner Brothers fixers bribed them into silence, protecting Flynn so long as his box office receipts stayed high. Joan Crawford's no-wire hangers moment became horror story legend after her daughter's memoir inspired Mommy Dearest. But even before Hollywood lore made her infamous, Crawford terrorized entire crews with snap inspections of her dressing room. A speck of dust? You risked a slap. Costumes that failed her exacting eye at the Johnny Guitar shoot were piled in the blaze of her fury. Her co-star Mercedes McCambridge left wringing her hands in horror. The feud between Crawford and Bette Davis reached fever pitch when Crawford stuffed Davis's costume pockets with lead weights, an act that legitimately injured Davis's back. Interviewers face-typed no-go question lists, and one rogue reporter who asked her age narrowly avoided a shower of roses hurled in blind rage. Lee Marvin entered Hollywood with combat stories from World War II etched into his face, and he never left the battlefield. On The Dirty Dozen, he punched a cameraman who dared question his blocking, breaking the man's nose and stalling production. Co-stars on Cat Ballou described acting opposite him as standing beside a live grenade, his bottle-fueled anger flaring at any hint of criticism. Directors began to film him before dawn, hoping the ex-Marine's rage might be slumbering. Yet in quieter moments, Marvin was remembered as warm and intelligent, proof that his inner turmoil, once unleashed, terrified even its wielder. Kirk Douglas's chiseled heroism concealed a demand for slave-driver perfectionism. As uncredited producer on Spartacus, he wielded power like a sword, firing directors and lashing out when any scene fell short. During The Vikings, he nearly decapitated Tony Curtis with a thrown battle-axe, later warning curtly, "Next time I won't miss." Stanley Kubrick, summoned to replace a fired director, ended up guiding scenes from the far side of the set, too intimidated to confront Douglas face-to-face. Over time, Douglas's reputation softened into tales of fierce dedication, his fury recast as the price of cinematic greatness. Orson Welles entered the world of filmmaking at 25 like a conquering genius, yet each masterpiece came tethered to an explosive temper. While shooting The Lady from Shanghai, he once hurled a chair through a wall, delaying production for days and quipping, "Bill me for the chair, not your shoddy wall." On Macbeth, he demanded his lead actress repeat a single sleepwalking take 87 times until her voice cracked, and when she wept, he coldly nodded, "Now you understand Lady Macbeth." Through RKO re-edit his The Magnificent Ambersons in his absence, Welles flew back and had to be restrained from attacking the editor. his cruelty stubbornly survived the respect owed to his legendary talent. James Cagney's snarling gangster persona masked a ferocity that crossed into real life whenever his artistry was slighted. He once stormed onto a Warner executive's office, grabbed Jack Warner by the collar and hoisted him off the ground with a growl. "Don't ever talk to me like that!" On Angels with Dirty Faces, he reduced Pat O'Brien to tears before snapping, "Keep him away from me until he learns his craft." Yet those who met his exacting standards found him remarkably supportive, a reminder that Cagney's fury was precise, surgical, aimed at artistic failure rather than indiscriminate rage. Charles Laughton brooded in silence until he exploded in torrents of verbal assault. While shooting The Hunchback of Notre Dame, he barricaded himself in his dressing room for 2 days, then armed himself with a heavy makeup kit and hurled it at the makeup artist. On witness for the prosecution, jealousy over Marlene Dietrich's screen time led him to give her a bruising accident on camera, just to make her character's terror feel genuine. Behind each eruption was a tormented artist convinced that only by inflicting fear could he summon authentic emotion. The face that never cracked in silent comedy, Buster Keaton's famous stoicism masked rare but monumental tantrums. During the troubled shoot of The General, constant mishaps built until Keaton methodically smashed an entire set with a sledgehammer, stone-faced as if nothing were happening. MGM executives who tried to curb his creative freedom learned that he could pick up a wooden chair, hurl it through a 14th-floor window, and then sit calmly beside the shards. His fury erupted not at people but at anything that threatened his artistic vision. Ava Gardner's stunning allure concealed a jealous, volcanic fury. On the set of Magambo with Clark Gable and John Ford, she overturned a heavy makeup table in a single motion, equipment crashing underfoot, as Ford demanded an apology. "When hell freezes over," she spat back. Contract negotiations with MGM's Louis B. Mayer degenerated into profanity so profuse even he turned pale. Her marriages to Mickey Rooney and Frank Sinatra became public spectacles of door slamming and smashed suitcases, a balcony toss of record albums in Rome, violent chapters in a romance that made tabloid headlines. By the dawn of television's watchdog glare, some of these irreplaceable icons had faded from commanding sets to more modest roles or bitter studio battles. Yet the same system that fostered their superstardom had also enabled their worst moments. Fixers to bribe cops, PR departments to bury scandals, and executives to excuse brutality as necessary genius. In the end, audiences paid for the art, but countless collaborators paid with shattered props, bruised egos, and in some cases, outright fear. What can we learn from these legends of rage? First, the thin line between brilliance and brutality reminds us that genius often demands a heavy toll. Second, no matter how talented, no one flourishes without accountability. Stars needed enablers just as much as devotees. Third, while audiences will always marvel at extraordinary performances, we must question at what cost those masterpieces were forged. Today, workplace protections and social media might expose tantrums faster than any gossip columnist ever could, but our appetite for scandal remains as voracious as ever. The Golden Age icons left us films that endure as testaments to cinema's transformative power. Yet behind each unforgettable frame there was a real person, flawed, mercurial, sometimes terrifying, whose thirst for perfection could scorch everyone in their orbit. Their legacies compel us to admire their work and to remember the human fragility that shaped it.